Welcome back to the Left of Old North. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm CJ.
This week, we're getting into the cracks forming inside of the North Carolina Democratic Party. But first, we want to announce that, well, he's already announced, but Wiley Nickel is officially challenging Thom Tillis for the Senate. But with Roy Cooper hovering in the background, and there's been a little bit of buzz about that this week, things could get a little complicated pretty fast. Plus, we're going to cover David Hogg's progressive push to primary establishment Democrats, or as Donald Trump loves to put them, Do-Nothin Democrats. And that push is gaining momentum. There is a clear divide, I think, between the obvious recipients of this push and also the younger generation, especially the ones that are more vocal on like TikTok and Instagram. And there's some real warning signs for state figures that we'll cover later. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about party leadership and what that means for 2026 and how we're going to move forward from this. But of course, something big happened this week. So there was a major court decision, a huge W for Democrats, and especially for Allison Riggs, to thwart the Republican efforts to take control of the North Carolina, both the State Board of Elections and also their attempt to try and just throw out a bunch of ballots out of hand and basically win this thing without actually winning it. So we got two dubs in the middle of a whirlwind, in the middle of a hurricane. It seems like a never-ending slurry of political fallout from both the 2024 election and also just North Carolina being North Carolina. But CJ, as our resident policy guy, can you explain a little bit to me and everybody else really what went down this week with these court decisions?
Yeah, so here in North Carolina, the federal appeals court halted the ballot curing process from beginning in this case of Riggs and Griffin. So essentially there's a 3-judge panel on the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals. And this past Tuesday, so that would have been the 22nd, I think? Yeah. 22nd, ordered the state to not mail any notices to the about 1,400 voters whose ballots are being included in the cure process while all this litigation continues, right? And so I want to point this out really quick. So Judges Toby Haytens, Paul Niemeyer, who are both appointed by Joe Biden and George H.W. Bush, respectively, approved the halt, while Trump appointee Judge Marvin Quattlebaum, that's a fun name.
That is a fun name.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think one thing that is really interesting is this is a bipartisan panel. This is a bipartisan decision right here. We got Republicans and we got Democrats saying, hey, maybe let's stop this stuff right now and, slow things down so that, Riggs' team can kind of figure out their next move.
Right. And that was an interesting dynamic that kind of happened. In that one, it was unanimous, right? And then in this other court decision that I was talking about, kind of alluding to earlier, specifically about the state auditor shift of election control. But in this one, it was a 2-1 decision. There were 2 Republicans on the panel, and then there was 1 Democrat. And remember, here in North Carolina, as I'm sure some of you listening probably know, we're referring to them that way because our judicial races are partisan. So, I mean, it's not a secret. But both the Democrat and the Republican sided with the side that was saying that this is unconstitutional because you cannot just place the electoral process in the hands of the state auditor, which, keep in mind, Dave Bolliak, who didn't even change his affiliation from Democrat to Republican until 2023, a guy who has said publicly that he is only in politics for Donald Trump and has absolutely no electoral experience, working with an elections body or anything. This was the guy that they were going to hand the reins over to, take control of our state elections, specifically because it would deny our incoming Democratic Governor Josh Stein the ability to do so. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they would be in charge of all of our election boards, all 100 election boards, that they would be in charge of a lot more than just overseeing the election. And for that to be a partisan position in the hands of a state auditor, which doesn't even make sense, huge bunch of red flags here, right? The question you have to ask yourself is this: if Democrat Jessica Holmes had won this state auditor race, do you think that this would have been in the bill that they pushed through in December, this Senate Bill 382? Do you think that provision would have been in there?
Oh, God, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, no. I mean, this is, as it has been said before, just a partisan power grab. No, plain and simple. That's it.
Partisan hackery. It 100%. Yeah. The fact that the fact that one of the Republican judges basically said that because the General Assembly still kept the power of the election boards within the Council of State, which technically the governor is a part of, it was constitutional. The other 2 said, nah, our state constitution specifically says that it's within the power of the governor to do this. That makes what the General Assembly did unconstitutional. So again, a big dub for people on the left this week. We got two. Yeah. And like my soul has been sustained on that for the last few days. Amongst all the other bullshit that we've had to deal with, I have been flying high because I know that at least some of it has been stopped.
I mean, whenever you're in a desert of shitty news, a drop of water feels like an oasis.
Exactly.
But at the same time, that's not to undermine, because this is absolutely huge. And we should say that Bullock has said that he will appeal this ruling, because of course he will, because that is just the Republican playbook. You don't like the result, they say, fuck that. We're going to sue our way to try and win.
Yeah. And here's the issue. Right? Are y'all ready for this? The issue is that if they appeal it, there are 15 judges on the Court of Appeals. 3 of them are Democrats. The rest are Republicans. And when a case goes up to the appellate courts, they pluck 3 people to sit on that panel and judge. Now, if they happen to get a couple of judges who are willing to just kind of let this partisan hackery take its course, again, we're setting really, really bad precedent here in this state. If that happens, not a lot I can say beyond that, because it's just kind of like, shit. I hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, and I gotta say, there's something kind of funny or ironic about a statement that Destin Hall, for all who don't know, is the Speaker of the House here in North Carolina. He said that he is going to appeal this as well, and expressed confidence in the law, and also said that the Board of Elections, operates elections, quote, much like in a banana republic.
What the hell does he even mean by that?
I'm not sure he knows what it means, but...
I mean, he did use the buzzword banana republic, which scares conservatives like no other, apparently. Which is funny, because if you know the history of what a banana republic is, it is pretty much the most capitalist thing you could possibly think of.
Really. He said, from failing to properly clean up our voter rolls, to determining third-party ballot access based on the political winds, to completely bungling simple voter registration requirements, the partisan Democrat board is a national embarrassment. Well, you know what? Hall, so are you. But anyway.
Well, and the other side of that coin, too, is like, but who pushed them to be partisan?
Yeah.
Who pushed election boards to be partisan? If I remember correctly, and I probably should have double-checked this research before recording, but I think it was under Tillis's reign as Speaker of the House that they changed the rules so that it was partisan to appoint election board members. The problem was that they thought they were going to get a lot more time with Governor Pat McCrory. And unfortunately, well, fortunately for us, unfortunately for them, Governor Roy Cooper put a very quick end to that.
Yeah, he kind of, put him in his place. But I mean, I guess that's what happens whenever you pass a law that costs the state billions of dollars in lost revenue.
Yeah, well, Republicans are extremely good at that. And pretending like money is just there, even though it's not going to get funneled to where it was supposed to go. Helene. Anyway, so what does this mean for the midterms? Like, because we're speaking really, really, really micro level right now. This just happened in the last couple days, really. We don't know what's going to happen within the next few weeks. We don't know what's going to happen within the next few months. When it comes to 2026, where do you see this going?
I mean, I see, and I would love for what I'm about to say to be me just being cynical, but I think it's just more me being realistic. I do see them trying to take this as far as they can. Republicans, that is. Trying to sue their way to, taking control of it, because that's their playbook at this point.
Sure.
We've said this before. I've said this before. They know their policies suck. They know that them as a party is not perceived very well, and their perception is being dragged down even more by Trump and his policies. And so what are they going to do? They're going to try everything they can to consolidate power so that whenever they have to deal with fallout of whatever the hell Trump does, that they are affected as little as possible.
Yeah.
So they are going to, try to steal a state Supreme Court seat, and they're going to try to, steal all the state board of elections stuff. They're going to continue to draw insanely shitty gerrymandered maps because, as we said before, they don't care about your voice. They don't care about your vote, dear listener. They care about empowering themselves, about empowering the people who they're supposed to be representing.
Right.
And again, I wish that was me just being cynical, but we see the evidence.
Well, I mean, it's not cynical when it's very clear, again, very clear partisan hackery. Like this isn't for the betterment of the North Carolina citizen. This is for the betterment of the North Carolina GOP.
Yes.
So that they can retain power in a state that is far more purple than they are willing to admit. We are being just suffocated by the amount of force that they have put into the way that they govern. It has been relentless. So, and I take from a meme here, no, you don't in fact gotta hand it to them. But at some point you gotta be like, God damn, all right, they really put forward their best foot. And one of the people that you kind of have to give a hand to is the guy who's sitting in our Senate seat right now. One of them is Thom Tillis. Dude was instrumental in creating the North Carolina GOP that we see today. He was the Speaker of the House during the Tea Party movement when they flipped it from blue to red back in 2010.
Yep.
He was the guy that managed to coordinate a sustaining campaign here for Trump in 2016. He was the guy that managed to get millions and millions of dollars in in funds and donations directly into the vein of NCGOP politics here. And not to mention, the guy who is currently the RNC chair was basically handpicked by Thom Tillis.
Yeah.
So I'm not handing it to him, but Tillis operates as if he is kind of a moderate Republican, like, oh, well, I'm going to use my best judgment and go that way. Make no mistake, he is not and never has been. So, dear listener, if you are on the cusp, or you know somebody who is like unaffiliated and is like, yeah, but Thom Tillis isn't that bad. He's not as bad as other Republicans. No, he is as bad, if not worse, because he is able to make you think he is not as bad as other Republicans. And we're going to get into that here in a little bit. But for the 2026 midterms, what this means is that if we care about democracy and we care about not just the rule of law, but trying to maintain some balance in this state, again, in this very purple state, more purple than most, we have to make sure that we are organizing for 2026. We have to make sure that we keep the seats that we already have, and I'm talking specifically the Democratic Party, and we have to ensure that we expand the minority in the House, expand the minority in the Senate, keep Justice Anita Earls' seat in the North Carolina Supreme Court, and flip some seats in both 2026 and 2028 for the Court of Appeals. Because like I said before, the Court of Appeals is stacked with Republicans. They have no shortage of people in there, one of whom is the very guy who is trying to overturn the election that Allison Riggs just won, Jefferson Griffin. He's on the Court of Appeals. He's one of those guys.
And he has refused to recuse himself from anything.
Right. Scruples be damned.
Yeah. Integrity be damned, really.
Soul be damned. But anyway, so that is on that front, the message is clear. The viewpoint should be clear for now, that the focus for 2026 is making sure that we hold on to the footholds and the handholds. I'm using a bad rock climbing analogy here, but we got to hold on to what we've got right now. And I know it doesn't seem like a win, but trust me, if you don't, it's going to get way worse than it already is, because now there's no recourse. We're stuck with people who are not willing to fight for us.
Which, if you've been paying attention to the news, and we've talked about this a little bit on the last episode, there's been some interesting developments in the DNC with David Hogg, as we said last week, with his push to get rid of kind of, what's the word? Useless? Well, I don't want to say useless. How would you phrase it?
Feckless, probably.
Spineless. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
useless.
spineless works too.
Yeah, Democrats. Okay, ones who aren't willing to take a stand or who have just been complacent and are just kind of showing they're willing to kind of let whatever happen. Mm-hmm. And, over the past week, I thought this was kind of interesting, but the fairly new chair, he just got elected chair, February or something, I think.
Ken Martin?
But, Ken Martin.
Yeah.
Gave David Hogg an ultimatum, essentially, saying, hey, you can back off of this, or you can, leave, essentially.
Yeah. It's, you start a job, you say, hey, I'm going to come in and change some things, and everybody's like, cool, we can't wait to see what you do, and then you start doing it, and they're like, no, not like that.
I mean, I think it's very interesting to see this response. Oh, it's interesting, and it's also just disappointing, but not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, we've said before, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
David Hogg, again, maybe this plan was the most well rolled out, but the idea behind it is at least a good one.
Yeah.
There are people who need to be primaried. There are people who need to lose their seats and be replaced with someone who's actually willing to do the work.
Yeah, because he didn't say we need more progressive people. I mean, he may have said that specifically, maybe. But I, in my own head, when I think about getting new people in, I don't necessarily picture just more progressives or more leftists or whatever. I'm picturing people who are going to represent the district that they live in better, and that are willing to, when the time comes that you actually need to step up for both your party and also your constituents, that you can balance those things, right? It's kind of like what we talked about with Cecil Brockman. It is vanishing when a vote comes across the floor and you actually have a chance to, like, you're in the room. You are down there and you are able to cast a vote. You're one of 115 people, 110?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
You're one of a small number of people in North Carolina that actually has a direct line to be able to say exactly what you want to do in our government. And you skip a vote? That's not what people elected you to do, man. It's just not. So that's what I'm talking about. Maybe Cecil Brockman reflects his constituency better than most would, like with his politics. Fine. But if you're not showing up for a vote at all, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
And like one
also,
example,
it's also 120 members, by the way.
120. Okay. But then, there's the other side of that where people are just completely disconnected from how they're supposed to be representing us. One great example that has he's only continued to make it worse for himself is Minority Leader Senator Chuck Schumer. The man seems allergic to good press right now.
Ever told him all press is good press, lied to him, and should be fired.
I'm going to send him a strongly worded letter.
Oh, good God.
I'm going to send so many strongly worded letters, and he's going to have to respond, because this is the mindset they have right now. CJ, this is the top guy in the Senate for the Democratic Party. He thinks that we are back in 1980, where you can send somebody a strongly worded letter, and they may choose to do something about it. Does he forget that Trump cannot read?
Okay, I don't know. Have you ever watched the show The Good Place?
No, I have not. And I'm sorry if I lose fans for that.
It's a good show. You really should watch it.
Okay.
It's the same guy who did like Parks and Rec in The Office. Anyway, so the whole concept is it's the afterlife, and you find out that souls aren't getting into heaven because there's this whole like messed up system. And so our main character goes to like this group of angels. They're like, oh, you gotta like fix this system. People are like going to the bad place, like, every day in droves. Like no one's been to the good place in years. And this like council of angels are like, oh yeah, no, you know what? That is a very serious problem. You know what? This is something we should talk about. You know what we're going to do? We are going to form a committee to discuss taking action. And we will give ourselves no longer than 1,000 years to discuss whether or not we want to actually form this committee to take action or not. Right? That's the mentality.
Just to form the committee, not even to like do the thing, not even to like make a decision, just to form the committee. It's going to take like 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Well,
and
yeah,
like that is the Schumer mentality. Like we said before, he's acting like we're still playing baseball, but like they've gone and created a whole new sport.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they're going around kneecapping people with the bats, and he's like, guys, get on base.
You can't red tape your way or, write your way out of authoritarianism. Like this guy, like Schumer, I think for Schumer at this point, hitting Trump on the back of the hand with a ruler would be considered too extreme.
Yeah. My mind all day since this story dropped has been going to that moment when Chamberlain lifts up that piece of paper on the flight line. It says peace in our time. But we didn't even get to that point. Like, he's not going to read that letter, dude. Like I already discussed, I don't think that Trump is actually literate. I think that it's been pretty clear when you watch him say speeches. He's like squinting real hard. He messes up on a bunch of words sometimes. He'll just make shit up as he goes along. He'll just riff. Like, maybe he's dyslexic. I don't know. I'm not trying to be ableist here. The point I'm trying to make is that kind of what you were saying. This is a different ball game. And when Chuck Schumer's just dragging the Democratic Party into the depths with him like an anchor in terms of popularity, in terms of people's belief in their ability to actually be the opposition party, no, he's just saddling us. And then, as if it wasn't bad enough, when all this is happening, he thinks, you know what? I'm going to go onto a major network television and tell them I wrote a strongly worded letter to the president. That'll show him. CJ's got his head in his hands, as do we all.
I'm looking over my liquor shelf right now, debating if I'm going to drink. No, so when I heard that little snippet of that interview, I just kind of paused the video and just kind of sat there for a second, just in sheer awe, I guess, of just how out of touch and how unable, I should say, there you go, how unable, whatever, that Schumer is to rise to meet this moment. Like, he either does not have the ability, the willingness, or the just knowledge, or the balls, I guess, to meet the moment, to rise up and be like, hey, let's cut the shit. Trump is just really kind of speed running authoritarianism.
Yes.
Maybe we should grow some fucking balls and do something about it.
I mean, it's not even just balls. It's just like what you said before. We've tried the same thing and nothing's working. So maybe you should change tactics, man. We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. That was how we started this year.
Yeah.
And so far, we've had a few little glimmers of hope from the Democratic Party, with Chris Murphy going on his speaking tours, with Senator Chris Van Hollen going to El Salvador and meeting with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Like, that was a huge boost for him. And people were like, he should run for president. I'm like, why? Because he did like the bare minimum?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to discount what he did, but like, that should be what we expect out of the leaders of our country. That shouldn't be that should not be the exclusion to the rule. Yeah, exception to the rule. Yeah. Thank you. That should not be the exception to the rule. So why is it? Why is our confidence so low? Because we got people like Chuck Schumer sending letters instead of going down to El Salvador. We have people saying in closed-door meetings that they're really not approving of what they're doing right now. What we need is a senator who's going to barge into the Oval Office and say, "You, sir, are a rat fucker," or something. I don't know. Anything. Get it on camera. Just the last few weeks, we had Gretchen Whitmer get sidelined or get sideswiped by the press when she thought she was going to meet President Trump for just a meeting for her state. And then she had that embarrassing moment where she put a folder in front of her face. But when you think about it, it's like, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you embarrass the other side, by getting them off kilter. And we're not doing that. We've become the reactionary side of the political aisle.
And we shouldn't be. Like, this is not the time for defense. It's the time for offense. It's the time for balls to the wall, pedal to the metal, just full on offense. Like, we don't need to be waiting for whatever insane bullshit executive order Trump signs to drop. We need to actively be anticipating it. The DNC, I don't know off the top of my head, the DNC gets how much fucking money per year, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how much they pay their advisors, their consultants, whatever, but they need to either pay them less or fucking fire them and hire people who can consult on this shit, who can, again, rise to meet the moment.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, you and I, we have at least some idea of maybe the justifications internally. Like, we can at least kind of figure it out.
Sure. I'm not sitting here saying, like, these people he's just stupid or whatever.
Yeah. But, like, to the just average everyday person who could not give less of a shit about this in their everyday life, if they look at the TV and they see Schumer and they're like, what, a letter? Well, they're going to just think, well, that guy's fucking stupid, or that guy is a coward, or, oh, what party is it? Is he a Democrat? Oh, yeah, I guess they're,
right. And that's what I was going to say, is the latter half. It's like, at this point, they Republicans would not be doing that. They would not be sending a strongly worded letter. They would be rallying people to, if not riot, get right up to the point where they might. And to an extent, we have seen that, right? We're seeing like 50-51. We're seeing all of these groups putting together like town halls. Just as an aside, maybe I can use this later, but I went to a town hall where our representative did not show up. And like, that is a good through line to say, see, they just do not care. They don't want to meet with constituents. The RNC has not the RNC, but the House Caucus, the Republican House Caucus, has instructed people not to hold town halls anymore. And even then, some of them still did, I'm not going to give them props, but at the same time, it's like, okay, you make the bed that you want to sleep in, right? Town halls are doing nothing except providing a through line for us to show that they are incredulous. They do not care. They don't care what you actually have to say. They will say anything to get reelected, unless you're in somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, where she can just be as brazen as she wants. People can get tased in her audience, and it doesn't matter. She doesn't care. She laughs, actually.
And something I want to say really quick before we get too far away from it.
Yeah.
Talking about like the 50-51 stuff and like these national movements, these protests. These groups shouldn't have to be doing the work that the Democratic Party should be doing.
I agree and disagree a little bit, because I don't think it's incumbent upon the political party to do these things. I think it's good in a way that these movements are happening independent of the Democratic Party, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. They should be independent. But at the same time, like, if you're comparing the two, if I'm looking at 50-51, I'm just going to say them just as kind of catch-all for these groups. Sure. If you're looking at 50-51 compared to the DNC, compared to the Democratic Party, you're like, oh, well, obviously the Democratic Party isn't doing anything, and these guys are,
But I think that lets them off the hook a little too easily.
They should at least be somewhat on a similar level.
Maybe. But I think that's also letting them off the hook a little too easily,
Yeah. You want to see action taken by the Dems.
I agree. I think that they do want to see action, but I also think that when we see action, it's not the kind of action that people want. Because, unfortunately, there is a set of rules in Congress. And those aren't always clear. This is where the baseball metaphor comes back into play. It's like they'll pull out some rule from like 200 years ago and people are like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, actually, it's always been in the rule book. We've just never used it. When we talk about political maneuvering, right? These people aren't experts, but they're just going to like come across something and use the tools they have and see if it works for the most part. With independent organizing, you don't necessarily have to abide by that. With like 50-51, they don't have to worry about the image tied to a political party because there was everybody out there, right? At this town hall, there were Republicans there too that were there specifically to voice their concerns about veterans issues, about Medicare, and all these other things to our representative, and he was not there. And my district representative is a Republican. So I get what you're saying, and I tend to agree that, like, yes, the Democratic Party should be stronger. But at the same time, like, don't you think it's a little bit cringe if they try to do too much? I think it turns some people off, to be honest.
I mean, maybe, but the question then is the number of people it turns off versus the number of people that gets engaged worth it.
That's a good point. That like, what is your return on investment, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly.
What is the ROI? Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think with like, when we talk about recruiting and stuff, it's like, what is we always have to look at what the purpose of an organization is, right? And I was talking about this with somebody the other day. What is the actual purpose of a political campaign? Is it to start a movement? Is it to headline a candidate and make them like the center of a conversation? Or is it to raise money? And in some cases, it can be all three. It can be one or none of them. But I think ultimately what a campaign serves to do is to raise money for a campaign so that it can be self-sustaining. Would you agree with that?
I'd say so, yeah.
And I think that a candidate is just kind of an addendum to that in a certain sense, right? It's like a circus act. If not to be too on the nose, maybe not a circus act. It's like a magic act, right? For the magician to keep doing his trade. I mean, yeah, he could do magic on the streets. He could probably be the best magician ever. But if he doesn't have a good PR team behind him, if he doesn't have people behind him that he's going to be able to tour with, and, you know, he doesn't have people to help out with his tricks, he doesn't have an assistant, a sexy assistant, right? The lovely assistant. If he doesn't have all of that as part of his act, it doesn't matter what his tricks are. He's still just a guy on the side of the street begging for change with magic tricks. It is a movement, but it is also a business in some sense.
Yeah.
But that's my take on that, I guess. we're kind of getting off track, I think, a little bit here. But I think that I can bring it back around to the whole David Hogg thing and why we run candidates in the first place, right? Because yes, very true that campaigns are there to raise money. But if the candidate is no good, it doesn't matter how much money you raise, right? Now, here comes a conversation we have to have about Representative Cecil Brockman and potentially somebody else on the Senate side. Now, this is a new development, right? I'm just going to read something I wrote down here. So State Senator Dan Blue, he's a longtime state senator who recently stepped down as minority leader. And there's a bit of conversation there about whether he actually stepped down or if he was going to get beat out for re-election by Sidney Batch. I don't know the behind the scenes of that. All I know is that she took the mantle, right? He's still in the Senate, but she's the minority leader. And while Senator Dan Blue remains a respected figure, the change is kind of opening the door for new voices and perspectives within the party, not unlike Sidney Batch's voice. But the problem is that now he is actively, at least according to the News and Observer, and this was something that just happened in the last couple of days that they reported on, that he's, quote, going his own way, end quote, and voting with Republicans on 4 key bills, including the state budget. Do you think he's in the crosshairs now for something like this?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that right now, where we're at as a party, as a country, as a state, whatever, people want 2 things. They want loyalty. Well, they want a lot of stuff, but 2 of the things they really want are loyalty.
In the moment, you mean? Like right now?
Yeah. They want loyalty, and they want to know that they can trust you as a representative of the party, as a member of the party. And, we have seen, Dems be primary before and lose their seat because they couldn't be trusted. Just look at Michael Ray last year up in NC-27 when he got beaten by Rodney Pierce. And I'm just saying that not just because I managed Rodney's campaign, but because it's true. Shameless plug.
Nice little pat on the back there for yourself. Hey, I'm not gonna knock you for it. But yeah, that's a good example.
But I mean, I think that this definitely puts Dan Blue on people's radars because they're like, well, they'll look at in a couple different perspectives. One is, is he doing this because he, no longer has to be a minority leader, so he can be free to vote however he actually wanted to the whole time, whatever.
Right.
Or is he doing this because he lost his position and now he's pissed and now he's being spiteful and vengeful?
I don't think it's the spite part necessarily.
Well, yeah, but people might start asking themselves that, and whenever they start asking themselves that does put him in the crosshairs potentially.
Yeah.
To bring it back to your question.
And I think you're right about the initial reaction from a lot of people is going to be on some kind of sliding scale of loyalty and trust, because the initial reaction from this story, where they mentioned that he was going to be working with Republicans more on like the budget and some of these other key bills that they want to pass, was not vitriol, but just kind of like a resigned indignation, maybe. This kind of like, well, primaries are coming up, Dan. And that was a lot of the comments that I saw online. Now, granted, these do not represent the vast majority of voters here in North Carolina, but I think when that is the initial reaction from people who are active online, that are engaged with politics, and they see that, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
Not bad for them. It's bad for the Democratic Party. It's bad for the North Carolina Democratic Party. And, we've said it before, but people like Cecil Brockman need to be primaried. Senator Dan Blue, that remains to be seen, right? He hasn't actually done anything yet. But the mere fact that he says that he wants to try and work with Republicans, and we can understand why, right? Because, we're in the minority here in the state. We have the governorship. We have 4 other members of the Council of State, but we do not have power within the General Assembly. We don't have power within the courts. So if you can maneuver your way into the good graces of the majority party, sure, I can understand politicking like that. But when we are at a current junction that requires some gumption, that requires some willingness to stand up to pretty much anything that Republicans want to do right now, especially if they are even adjacent to the Trump agenda, that's important for not just your donor base, that's important for your base of support. These people want you to do something substantial. They need action, and what you're offering them is complicit. And what you're offering them is that you're going to be complicit with the majority party, the people that you are in opposition to. So I'm not holding out hope. I'm not necessarily tied to it, both, politically, or I don't have strong feelings about Senator Dan Blue one way or another. Love to get him on the podcast. Dan, you up for it? We can talk about this a little bit more in depth, but, share your feelings about this, but, just understand where we're at in this moment, I think, is what we're really saying.
Yeah. And like I said, I think maybe I don't think it's going to be some sort of Trisha Cotham situation or anything like that where he turns red or anything. No, not at all. But I do definitely think that a lot of people are going to be paying closer attention to what he does now.
Yeah.
While they try to suss out whether or not they can trust him or not.
Yeah. And he's definitely painted a target on his back, probably unintentionally in a way. But people are saying he's the new swing vote, and that remains to be seen, in my opinion. The real swing vote is going to be in 2026 with this Senate run. And that's what we want to spend this last section on. We've avoided talking about it for a little while, sort of as a joke. But like we said at the top of the episode, Wiley Nickel earlier this month announced that he was going to be running for Senate. We knew that he was going to run way ahead of time just because of FEC filings, and that his Twitter and Instagram accounts were following a bunch of people that it was like Wiley for Senator, Wiley 2026, something like that. The Republican incumbent, Thom Tillis, who we've already sort of talked about, he has served 2 terms as the senator from North Carolina. And what's going to be interesting is that Wiley Nickel is kind of positioning himself as a moderate Democrat. That was how he ran when he originally was the representative from the 13th district. That's the district I'm in right now, ironically enough, until he was gerrymandered out of his seat. So he previously represented the North Carolina 13th congressional district, and he positioned himself as a moderate Democrat then. I'm sure he's going to do it now. I don't know how well that's going to work on a statewide race like this. Especially when Senate races, as we know, are kind of national affairs. I mean, you are running to represent your state, but there is a much broader reach in terms of just national appeal, in terms of how much money you're going to bring in from outside of your state. You can look at any Senate races from the last 10 years and see that to be true. So with this happening, there's also a lot of, as I'm sure that you are probably aware, dear listener, that there's a lot of buzz about whether Roy Cooper, former Governor Roy Cooper, is going to run. He has been like the belle of the ball that the National Democrats are trying to get to run here. And it's no shocker that he's the guy that they want, right? He's won statewide, not twice, 4 times. Twice as AG, as Attorney General, and twice as the governor. So that's something to really consider. It cannot be denied that he is popular in the state. But the problem is, a lot of people see him as too old, which compared to Tillis is kind of like, come on. Wiley Nickel is not as well known throughout the state, and that's a big problem. I mean, if he's the guy that they're going to run, if we don't even have a primary, it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle there. But there's another factor to this. And CJ, it's time to play the game you've all been waiting for. How much money did they make in Q1? CJ, are you ready to play?
Sure. I feel like we need some theme music right here.
Please don't sue me. Price is Right, because that was definitely the Price is Right.
I was going to say, what is it? 10 seconds is fair use?
Yeah, something like that. It's like 5 to 10 seconds or something. So one thing that this is going to really be in 2026 is a money game. And we kind of know that going in with most of these Senate races now, because like Senate races are becoming multi-million-dollar affairs right out the gate. Mm-hmm. But we really need to talk about how much money each of these candidates has raised in Q1. Yeah. So, CJ, are you ready to play?
Sure.
So your first candidate is going to be Thom Tillis. Now, keep in mind, Thom Tillis does have a good little coin purse on his belt, and he has been in the Senate for a long time, has a lot of backers, has a lot of PACs behind him. So, CJ, if you can get within $100,000, you will get something. You will get a prize. I can't tell you what it is. If you win, I will think of it.
Good to know.
So, how much money do you think Thom Tillis has raised in Q1? Now, Q1 is the 1st of January through the 31st of March.
Right.
Of this year.
Total donations.
I'm sorry, you've run out of time. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, total donations from independent small dollar donors plus PACs. Not counting cash on hand prior to, just how much he's raised in receipts this quarter.
I'm going to take a wild but not so wild guess and say like 1.9.
You were pretty close. You weren't within $100,000, so I'm sorry, you do not win the prize. Thom Tillis raised $2.2 million in Q1. Counting everything that he had already, he currently has a pretty substantial war chest. So, CJ, you have a chance of redemption, yes. Okay?
Okay.
You will get 2 of the same prize, of which I have not divulged yet, nor thought of. But if you can get within $250,000 of what Thom Tillis currently has cash on hand, then you will win. How much money does Thom Tillis, plus the $2.2 million that he has raised, have in cash on hand right now?
I'm going to say $50 million.
Oh, no. Way too much.
How about more like 10 million?
Not quite. Okay, so it's about 4 million cash on hand.
Oh, that's better than I thought it'd be.
But here's the other part of this, and this is what people don't typically think about when these campaigns raise money. That is with 0 debt.
Yeah.
And that's something we're going to talk about here in a second, because it's time for round 2. Wiley Nickel is your candidate. Now, how much money do you think he raised in Q1? I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do this game show host voice.
Q1, so January through end of March.
Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, he announced April 9th was the official day that he announced.
That was the official day, but there's no way in hell that was when he started raising money.
No, you are correct.
So using that logic, if I'm running that, I want to make sure that I feel I'm in a place where my campaign is at least somewhat viable finance-wise before I actually announce.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure I have enough money to pay for whatever promotional stuff I'm going to be putting out there or whatever. So I'm going to say 20,000.
Dude, you were right on the money. That's crazy. Nice job.
I had to redeem myself after, saying 10 million for Tillis.
Wow. Yeah, no, you hit it right on the nail. He's raised $20,000 in contributions in about 3 weeks since he announced. There's been some more since then, just from little packs here and there. But yeah, that's how much he's raised. Now, here's the real question. How much money do you think he has cash on hand?
That I feel is a lot less. That I feel is probably going to be maybe 10.
10,000?
No, sorry, no.
No, how much he has cash on hand?
On hand. My bad.
Y'all, I think he might be stalling so he can look this up on his phone.
No, look.
He's showing his hands now.
For those who can't see, my hands are in front of my computer, so Adrian cannot accuse me of that.
Yeah, he's got his hands, and I can't see where his hands are right now. I'm just straight up lying.
This is how we're going to actually start doing the video. Videos of this.
This is when
this
CJ.
Is the sole reason why.
This is the episode
Yeah.
where he demanded that we do video every single time because he's like, Adrian, I'm sick of your shit.
So
And we're like Penn and Teller.
I mean-
we don't talk outside of this show.
I'm sure he has more money left over from his like previous campaigns and whatnot that he can just do whatever with. So
That's that. Yes.
maybe $500,000.
Yeah. 520,000. That's how much cash he has on hand. Here is the rub though. And this is where I'm not going to make you guess. He owes close to $1 million in expenditures. Right. So that's kind of what you were talking about before, where there's a lot of just base level, like getting your campaign off the ground. I haven't poured through what all that is based in, but like, I mean, and all of this, if anybody's interested, all of this is free and available on the FEC website. You can go and check all this stuff out for yourself right now. This is not some like secret way that I was able to pull together this stuff. Like, it's all publicly available.
Adrian's actually actively hacking into Wiley Nickel's campaign committee.
I actually hacked into Thom Tillis' campaign committee, and they had already hacked into Wiley Nickel. So it was like it was a secondhand hacking for legal reasons. I did neither of those things. So anyway, so yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now with those two campaigns. Thom Tillis has a metric shit ton of PAC money just rolling in. 5,000 here, 5,000 here, 5,000 here, 5,000 there. We're getting donors like UPS, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, all sorts of big dollar donors, not just from interest groups, but also from companies, right? What'll be interesting to see over the next few months, at least until 2026 really starts to pick up, if there are any other primary challengers, is how much money can Wiley Nickel actually get pulled together, let's say at the end of Q3, because that'll be a good indication of how viable this campaign actually is. And again, this is just the brass tacks. This is not implying anything negative or positive. Campaigns are a marathon. They are not a sprint. It takes, there have been races won on way less money. Money is not the end all be all. So I do not encourage anybody to say, oh, his campaign's dead in the water because while Thom Tillis raised 2.2 mil, he only raised 20,000. Let's keep things in perspective here.
Yeah, no, I will say it's gonna be interesting if, say, Roy Cooper does hop in this, which from what I've heard, it's right now it's like a solid 50-50 chance. At least that's what I heard last week from some, I think, article.
50-50, huh?
But
let me find a coin.
Yeah,
keep going.
No, it's going to be interesting to see which way the money kind of breaks. Like, what PACs throw money whose way, or where the small donor dollars kind of end up. It's going to be for those who are like really nerdy about this. So like, you and me, and all of our campaign friends. If Cooper does run, I'm looking forward to that quarterly report.
Same.
I really want to dive into that.
Yeah, that's you're right. That is something that only people who are political nerds would actually be excited for. Like, hearing you say it out loud, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. And then I'm like, I stepped outside of myself for a second. I'm just like, anyway.
Okay, Adrian's holding up a coin to the camera for y'all who, for everyone, because
if it is indeed 50-50, I want you to call it right now.
Okay.
Heads, Cooper's running. Tails, he's not.
Okay. I'm going to say heads. I'm going to say heads.
All right. Unfortunately, you're going to have to find out what I actually flipped on the next episode of Left of Old North. I am so sorry. We are out of time for today. Thank you for listening all the way through. And you can follow us on social media. We are on Blue Sky's Left of Old North. We're on pretty much everything is Left of Old North. We are on TikTok. We are on X still for some reason. We also have a Patreon. You can also buy us a coffee. And if you want, you can join our Discord. We're going to have a website up and running here in a pretty short time. But until then, just make sure to follow us so you can keep up to date on North Carolina politics, as well as what we're doing with the show. We release these episodes every Monday, and we're going to do it pretty consistently now, I think.
Yeah. Also, follow us on our Substack.
Yes, we started a Substack, and we're going to start writing some articles and also doing video content. If I have finished recording it and everything, the video will be up on our YouTube channel today while you're listening to this episode. So please make sure to check that out as well. Talk a little bit more about Cecil Brockman and all that stuff. So we hope that regardless of how you feel about today's episode, and if you're still mad at me about the coin flip, I understand. But at the same time, I sure hope that you will stay with us on the Left of Old North. Have a good day.